Behold my peaceful village, full of peaceful villagers. Now I love my villagers, and I don't want them to die. So I built a wall around my entire village and put 2 guard posts at the only 2 entrances. And in these guard posts are my golem guards. This one's name is Sergeant Duke. Now Sergeant Duke is gonna keep my villagers safe from any pillagers that might want to storm through the gates and make their life hell. But you're thinking to yourself, Sergeant Duke is only 1 golem and he's trapped inside this fenced-in area. He's not going to be able to save all those villagers. But that's where you're wrong, because he's a sergeant, and that means he's in charge of a whole group of golems. Let me show you what I mean. If we throw a few pillagers in here, watch what happens. They go up and they start taking pot shots at our friend Sergeant Duke. Now, did you see what happened behind them? Look at right there. There are the reinforcements, and they're coming out to kick some pillager butt. And in no time, all of those pillagers are gone. And these guys are on patrol, keeping an eye on the village for a long time to come. So how did I do it? Let me show you real quick. If we go up inside here, we can see a group of 4 dispensers. And you can see the pattern for part of an iron golem right here. Now if you look, the dispensers are right where the head of the iron golem would be. If we look in the dispenser, we can see that there are some carved pumpkins. And what's happening is when Sergeant Duke gets attacked, Sergeant Duke triggers a skulk sensor. The skulk sensor right here detects that he's taking damage, and it triggers all of those dispensers to dispense the pumpkin and hence dispense the golems. And you have a little protective force of golems running to the rescue. So let me show you how I did this. Okay, here we are in my research and development world. Now, as you can see, I've got a copy here of the guard post from the village. It's even complete with a guard here that doesn't have a name. Now let me show you just how I set this up. If we go down into this area here, you can see the skulk sensor here is feeding to a comparator. Now, when an entity takes damage, the skulk sensor outputs a signal of 8, or 8 blocks long, of redstone signal. So if we count here, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's open this up in here, 7, 8. And then we reach a repeater and the redstone signal continues. Now that means that any signal less than 8 will not trigger that. Well, that's good news and bad news. Things like somebody walking by will not trigger those dispensers. Putting blocks will trigger those dispensers. So one of the last things you want to do is put the skulk sensor in place. And also, when we reload our guard station here, we don't want to be triggering the dispensers every time we place one of those iron blocks. So I've also put wool right here, and the wool muffles the ability of the skulk sensor to hear us placing blocks back behind it, because it's in the path between the skulk sensor and where I'm going to be placing those iron blocks. Now if I go in here, you can see that I've done it with stone where I need to place those blocks. That's just to make my life easier. Now I didn't do a chest full of all the blocks that you would use for this build, simply because you can make this look however you want. There are literally very few blocks involved in the actual building of the redstone circuitry. So let me show you layer by layer how this is done. Now what I did is I just have a progression of this build here, starting at the bottom layer and working up. So if we go here, we want to do our first layer. In this case, we did the bottom of the square tower. Those are just blocks of cobblestone, and blocks of cobblestone behind them here. Now there's a space of 4 between them here and 3 between them here. 4, 4, but 3 going horizontally here. Now I'm going to build our golem. So all I did was laid out 4 iron blocks in this T pattern. And then you just put a carved pumpkin on top of it, and it suddenly turns into an iron golem. So if we go down here, we're going to go on to layer 2. And all you've got to do is add these blocks on top of the tower. And obviously these are walls here, cobblestone walls. You'll add another layer of cobblestone on top of each of these columns. Moving on to here for layer 3, all I did was added another layer to these columns, and then I put some staircases in upside down to kind of blend that into archways. You don't have to do this, it just looks a little nicer in my opinion. And added those here as well to just kind of create those archways. Now if we move down over here, this is layer 4, and all I did was I capped off the top of this. Now I used slabs. The cobblestone slabs are shallower, so you end up with a little more headroom for our garden here. Those could be blocks just as easily, he would still fit. Now I also put a torch here. This redstone torch allows me to trigger this manually if I would so desire. Let's say I'm in the village doing something and I notice this raiding party coming. I can go underneath here, click that button, and it will trigger this redstone torch, which then triggers another one up above, and it will automatically activate our 4 golems. And then I did start to add the roof here. This is just nether brick staircases. Again, use whatever staircases you want to create that roof. Now moving on here to layer 5, we're going to add layer 5 and the redstone. So layer 5 is another layer of cobblestone blocks here. And then a layer of cobblestone blocks down the center here. Now you're going to see some more blocks, other blocks that are included in here, and I'll get back to that in a moment. And another layer of our roof line. And then the blocks I'm talking about are those stone blocks that we use to align the iron blocks underneath. So if you take a look, we're in this T pattern right here. So we've got a block of cobble, the T pattern, then a dispenser. This one's just turned the other way. Dispenser, T pattern, dispenser, dispenser, T pattern. And there's that redstone torch we talked about before. When we go up here, you can see that there is an entire line of redstone dust here with a repeater here. Now the repeater is important. You don't have to set it to a certain number of clicks, but it's important because that is the end of our line of 8 blocks for the redstone signal for our guard being damaged. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we hit the repeater, which makes sure that that lights up the entire distance, but also prevents this from activating backwards as this sits like this. So also you'll notice the 2 wool blocks here. Those are to prevent us from triggering that skulk sensor when we're putting in those iron blocks to basically load our 4 golems. You want to put that skulk sensor in last, because otherwise, until this is all built, every time you put a block somewhere, you're going to trigger this, and you don't want that happening. And then also we've got this comparator here, which will, imagine that is our skulk sensor, that will read the output of that skulk sensor. So moving on, this is layer 6. All I did was continue the walls. I added some iron bars here, and just to make kind of like barred windows, added another layer of the roof here. And I also added a redstone torch. Now you see here, I did 1 too many or 2 too many. I added another block of cobblestone here, and then the redstone torch here. So there's basically 2 stone here before, and that's where your redstone torch goes. Now notice this isn't lit anymore. And that's because it's being inverted as it powers the block from underneath. So now if we were to go down here, push this button, this torch will go off, but that torch turned on, triggered this. So watch those dispensers when I do it. They dispensed. And there's no pumpkins in them yet, so they're not dispensing anything. Moving on to the next layer. This is layer 7. All I did was put our roof on here, and you can see that I once again used the slabs instead. And then I finished off our roof with just a line of slabs here, and laid a slab down underneath here just because it looks kind of wonky otherwise. There's just something not quite right about that, so I always put one underneath there. By the way, wonky is a technical Minecraft term. Now moving on to layer 8, we're just putting on the very top layer here, and that's these parapets, I think is what they're called, on top of this. We didn't add anything else, so it's just window dressing. And then finally, we need to load it up. Now this is the skulk sensor. And we also need to load the pumpkins and load the iron blocks. So if we go back here, you can see I've already loaded the iron blocks and I've already loaded the pumpkins. Now I am in the perfect spot to put in the skulk sensor because all those other blocks are in place, so we don't have to worry about it triggering by accident. So we're going to put the skulk sensor there. And you'll notice it didn't trigger it at all. And you can even see my sounds going to that skulk sensor. Okay, so now it's time to test this out. So I grabbed a pillager spawn egg, and I'm going to go over here just so these pillagers don't aggro on one of the other golems. And I'm going to spawn in a few. Now watch what happens. As soon as they take pot shots, our 4 golems come to the rescue. Now we could reload this immediately and just continue to have more and more golems dispensed as the battles go on. And that's all there is to it. This is a neat little addition to your village or base, something to just protect things when you're not around. So if you like this video, please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, or best of all, share. And if you didn't like this video, please keep it to yourself. Thanks for watching.